It's time for the finals of the Intel Extreme Masters Cologne 2015. We've had 2 days of matches so far here in beautiful Cologne, Germany. Now it's down to 2 teams. It is going to be QG versus Ever kicking off the finals here at the desk. It is going to be Dexter, Yamato Cannon, and of course Froskuren joining us. QG versus Ever. Did any of us see this coming starting this weekend?
To be fair, with a tournament like this, we have a new patch, we have new rosters. Some of them are still not new, I guess, the 2 rosters on top, but I feel like it was very, very hard to predict this one.
All I hear is excuses, Yamato. a true expert would have. No, I was just. I mean, none of us, even the community, right? I really didn't hear anybody be like, "Oh yeah, QG versus Ever." That's definitely what we're going to see on Sunday. What did you guys think?
I mean, now that Europe is out, we can just start with the real tournament, right?
This is what Intel Extreme Masters was meant to be, this final match between these 2 teams. What about you, Froskuren? Are you surprised at all by these results?
I mean, I was shocked. It was funny. I mean, no one knows this, but behind scenes, Show was like, you know what? I bet it's going to be QG versus Ever. He's 100% on his prediction right now.
I was actually waiting for one of you guys to mention that. It was the whole setup, and here we go. So I am the only one who predicted this final. But let's take a look at the schedule, how that all worked out. Of course, QG had to play 2 days of matches coming in. They started off against Dig, as you can see on your screens. Then they made it all the way through after taking down Fnatic. Meanwhile, Ever, they got to wait until day 2. They faced a very good-looking H2K, but in the end, they're going to be able to come through to the finals. And here we have the 2 teams. And in case you missed some of those matches we had earlier in the weekend, we've got a little recap for you for both of these finalists. Fnatic going up against QG.
This is a massive mistake. He's gonna flash the decimating smash, but he'll go down anyways. First blood over to Spirit. TCT, TNT, flashing forward. TNT will be able to pick one up, but his team is all gone. And this is gonna be an ace, a double kill, going over to the Nidalee. Goodbye, QG Reapers. Right now, the QG Reapers, meanwhile, will be grabbing themselves a win to take this one all the way to Game 3. We have a 1-1 series tied for the semifinal to see who makes it all the way there. QG just coming back with a big game. The Ignite is on. They want to get a quick first blood, and they will do it, knocking him all about. The wombo combo will not connect the way they wanted it to. TCT and the rest of the team leading the charge to try and take down Fnatic. Devastating does not go down. It's only Reckless after Gonsu. That's going to be it. It's an ace for QG Reapers.
And it is the second semi-final ever going up against H2K. Thank you. Vander, he's going to be able to get the headbutt forward there. Keys in the middle of the mix there. Vander's going to drop down. It's a single kill for Loken there as well. 0-1, they're trying to push in and get rid of that 80 carry, but a bit of heal coming out and a double kill coming up. Now they're getting aggressive, and now they're pushing forward. They might even be looking for the finish. Game number 2 between Ever and, of course, their opponents H2K. Forgiven doing some serious work now. Jankos, Forgiven going forward. They're trying to finish this one off, and ESC trying to hold it back, but no! H2K are going to take it to a Game 3. Did hit it, Ares is going to get in there, but the first blood goes over towards Forgiven. You got H2K to this game in the first place, but it looks like he this time might not be enough.
So QG versus Ever. I mean, looking back, I think the part that really stands out is H2K taking that game 2 against Ever. What a finish to that one, of course. We saw Forgiven just jumping up with joy. They weren't able to close it out, though. And now we have these 2 teams from the Asian scene coming in. Let's start with QG. Talk about their transformation, because they've improved a lot over this whole weekend. I mean, they're very different from what we first saw.
I feel like after every series they played, there was always question marks. After the first one they played, what I was thinking, will they adapt the draft? Will they figure out what Swift should do in game? They figured out the draft. And in the series against Fnatic, the question was, will they be able to play in other styles than just this teamfight style? And then they pull off this 1-3-1. So throughout this tournament, the improvement has been massive. And I expect the same coming into the final.
Yeah, I mean, Dexter, what do you think? Isn't it kind of surprising to see a team be able to adapt so much within just one weekend?
I mean, that's how it works with every single tournament, probably, because every team plays a different region meta, probably. Europe has its picks, China has its picks, of course, like Kazakhstan, for example, has been really big in China way before all the other teams picked it up. And then, of course, if you come to a tournament, you start scrimming, practicing the teams, and then you start developing like a feel for like power picks. And I think the one pick that every single team agreed on probably was like Trundle. That is like the huge power pick.
Not in Italy?
not in Italy, not in Italy. I mean, all teams that played like a lot of Italy, yeah, it's it's not going so well. But of course, like I think Lissandra is going to be one of the picks that is going to be like just from over the course of the tournament developed into like one of the top tier picks. But I think Frostgreen can probably talk more about that, right?
Oh, in terms of Lissandra, I was just going to kind of cover the bullet points about why that champion is so potent and powerful. I think a big thing is not only her flexibility in the draft phase, which is what Dexter was talking about, but likewise her cost-efficient itemization, especially in kind of the new core mid items. She does very well with Frostwing's Claim, but she doesn't need to have it because she's also offering a lot of CC backline threat. She works great with double teleport compositions, which we've seen ever run, I think, like majority of their games in the Kespa Cup. I think it was 9 out of 10 games in the Kespa Cup they ran a double TP in majority of their games here, so it's obviously very important to them, and she's just going to continue to be a top tier pick alongside Rise, things like that.
Yeah,
also her matchup into Rise is fairly decent.
Right on, yeah, and kind of going off of that, the draft is something we talked about a lot in the beginning, but we weren't sure what to expect. And then as things developed, like you said, we've seen different contention points coming out. But what's something big we learned and perhaps still a weakness for QG when it comes to the draft, Frostgreen?
It's this idea of an effective champion pool. An effective champion pool is not what you do play, it's what you can play, what you find impact and success on. And QG, they play a lot of champions, but they're not effective on a lot of them. And if you look across the other side at Ever, it's so polarizing. They are effective and they are defining the meta on a massive pool of champions. I think that's the #1 thing going in Ever's favor in terms of this draft phase.
Yeah, I mean, QG is a team that just blind picks, first picks Fiora or Alistar, and they don't get punished for that. But I think a team like Ever is probably going to be the one team that is going to look to just have like a counter pick, a pocket pick ready. We've seen the Varus comes out very effectively, fitting into this team comp, and Ever just is like, they're like the gods of drafting at this tournament, and they do like everything right, hide all their flex picks till like the last pick possible, adapt their team comp what they need, and then we even saw this pocket Vayne that was like perfect. And HOK even said they couldn't like predict it probably, that the Vayne is coming out and completely like countering the entire team comp.
Yeah, Yamato, I mean, we've been impressed with it. Sure, only one match, but a lot with what Ever has brought so far to the Intel Extreme Masters.
I feel like the Ever versus HK match was the best of 3 we had here, simply because both teams got kind of pushed to the brink in a way. And with that in mind, Ever showed draft skills that were beyond comprehension, but also like their play in game was also very, very impressive. It was very, very close to flawless, except that slip up in the end against, of course, Forgiven, that cleaned up with his Tristana. But beyond that, their understanding of their winning, like how they win the game with their, of course, conditions. And with that in mind, their play beyond their draft has been phenomenal as well.
Yeah, so now that we've touched upon a little bit of both teams, you mentioned, Dexter, that Ever is probably going to be that team that's going to challenge QG. What do you think is going to be the biggest? Is it going to be that Fiora being banned out, or what else do you think will be the focus for Ever?
I mean, Fiora does have a good matchup into Lissandra, and Lissandra's a pretty good power pick going into this. I don't necessarily think it's the right move to blind pick Fiora, especially when there are other power picks, particularly through the jungle right now. And the funny thing is that Swift is still in this tournament. We talked about like the big 4 junglers being here, and Swift was on that list, but we didn't talk about Ares. And of course, now our final is Swift versus Ares. It just
right.
And it's like, speaking of junglers, it's like we were talking so much about how the importance of jungle would be in this patch, but in reality, we saw so much in Italy that kind of point got broken down. But whenever we saw an Elise, whenever we saw Mundo, then they just dominated games. We saw Kirei on Elise, we saw Jankos on Elise, and of course we saw the Mundo just powering through almost every game he was in. So that in mind, when we're at the final stage, I feel like this is where the jungle will truly matter, because I feel like these both teams understand which champions are the good ones.
Okay, then all jokes aside, Dexter, if Ever decides, all right, so let's push the limit of Swift a little bit, bans out some of these other junglers, and Swift does, most likely would kind of revert back to the Nidalee, do you see that as being a big problem and a weakness for QG?
It's going to be like, it depends, because I think Ever is like one of the only teams that knows how to punish Nidalee properly.
Okay.
Because Kalista is one of the biggest picks against Nidalee just because her ultimate. I'm not sure if like any team like agrees with me, but if you pick Kalista into Nidalee, Italy can't really do anything because you have like this support that you can pull them back, and then you can just hard engage on that champion. Also, Lissandra obviously very hard engaged, and I think just Ever is just a team that probably knows that Swift is going to pick Nidalee, and they have something prepared for it, how to counter it. But Nidalee, it's like a champion. If you snowball, then you probably have like a decent shot at winning the game. But at the same time, other junglers are just a lot better in this tournament, and we've seen Mundo most likely going to be banned. I think both teams have come to the realization that Mundo is the power pick to play in the tournament. And we haven't seen Kindred at all, but I think Elise and Rek'Sai are probably going to be like the standard 2 picks that we might see. Hopefully we'll see.
All right.
Both teams.
Yeah, something to look forward to. Of course, we will be jumping into the picks and bans very soon. But before we jump in there, as you saw, the players are getting ready, and we have a chance to actually hear from the manager of QG. It's going to be Linko on the stage with Sean.
Thank you, Chobra. Indeed, I am joined by Linko. Thank you so much for joining me and taking the time to just answer a couple of quick questions here, because there has been a lot said by some people, we'll call them our experts, where they've been kind of complimenting you know, QG's evolution throughout the last 2 days. And my question to you is, how has the team been preparing here at IEM Cologne?
所以我们分析师都认为你们这2天的进步非常大。那你们最近做准备怎么样？
因为我们在国内的时候，其实训练的状况不是特别的好，在来之前就已经做了一个以赛代练的准备，然后随着就是一次一次的比赛，然后我们逐渐找回自己的状态。
Okay, so actually, when we were in China and we got the news that we were going to come to Cologne, our conditions to train weren't the best, actually. So we took it 1 day at a time while we were here, and we slowly improved.
Okay. Now, looking at your opponent, Ever, I mean, everybody's been very impressed with their performance yesterday. So, I mean, I'm sure that you and your team have watched it. What were you guys able to kind of take away from their performance yesterday?
那昨天大家都看见 Ever 是一个非常长的一个战队，那你昨天也肯定看见他们的比赛，那你对他们最大的印象是什么
？Ever 这个战队是一个很强劲的对手，他的 BP 做得很聪明，然后他的战队的策略，其实在中后期的团战处理得非常的好，节奏掌握点很好。
All right, so Ever, their pick and ban is really perfect. They're definitely a very strong team, and you know their strategy is very clear cut. They have a very strong late game, and they're very good at team fights, and they're really good at holding the pace of the game.
Okay, okay. Look, obviously, we know what's on the line now. There's the chance to pick up that trophy, but both yourselves and Ever are already going to Katowice. So how much of, let's say, a mental advantage does the winner get? You know, ending off 2015 with this win, going into 2016, knowing strong.
Right.
I think it's so excited because it's first time show also outside of China, and then we go IEM final, world final. It's so lucky.
Well, we hope that you are indeed very lucky, and it is absolutely lovely to have you here playing with us outside of China, so I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure you'll be prepping with the team. Let me shake your hand, sir. Thank you again so much. Thank you so much for translating. Guys, we know what's on the line. We know what's coming up. Chobra, let's break it down.
All right, we are on the brink of the finals here at the Industry Masters Cologne. Don't forget, you can kind of tell us who you think is going to win by going over to twitter.com/IEM. And so far, I took a sneak peek. I mean, we'll get the full results later, but it is heavily in favor of Ever. So if you're a fan of QG, you might want to go and tell your friends to go put their votes in. So it gets a little bit more even before the match starts. But yeah, we heard from them, of course, both teams, they did secure their spots at the World Championship for the Industry Masters in Katowice. So that pressure is gone. But, you know, ending 2015 with a trophy going into your case is going to feel pretty good. Do you think QG's up for the task? I mean, QG's definitely the one who's kind of the challenger, right?
I feel like the question is if QG, the first step is going to be adapting to those power picks that, of course, Ever showed. In the shape of Lissandra, and of course, they've shown that they played the Rise. They haven't really picked Trundle that many times. They saw them ban it once, pick it once. And with that in mind, just adapt to those power picks and work from there.
And speaking of adaptation, the thing about QG is that I feel that they actually play to the level of their opponent, or they upgrade as their opponent levels up, simply because it's almost like they shadow people around. They're a very reactionary team as opposed to proactive team, and Ever have already shown they have great objective identification. So it's this idea that as Ever are going to be moving around the map, probably dictating the pace of the game, QG are used to kind of tailing behind someone and following and just waiting for that big team fight. So they tend to look better because like, wow, QG really know where they're going right now. No, they're really just following their opponent.
Okay, so yeah, just kind of shadowing them, and then if the fight goes in their favor, of course, they kind of look like the geniuses who decided what was going to happen. But most likely, we are going to see Ever, and we even heard Linko give that credit to Ever, being like, you know what, they're not only are they good at team fighting, of course, their draft has been brilliant, but they know how to play the game out. They know when they're going to be strong. They know how to finish their game, of course, and win under those conditions that we've mentioned so much. That we've seen some of the teams here, they'll have better drafts than we expect, and then they don't know how to close it out.
It's like the one reason I'm kind of worried for QG is the fact that usually in these games, what usually happened was they had to do one big mistake and then all of a sudden they realized their win conditions. It's like, for example, versus Fnatic, they grouped up once and got AoE'd, and then they realized, oh my goodness, we have to split up. Those mistakes, I don't think you can pull that off against Ever.
All right, well, it is a best-of-5 here in the finals, so QG will see if they can last it out. They are going to start off with a hard ban.
Strange to see the Gangplank ban on the blue side.
Yeah.
Huh.
Very strange.
I mean, typically when you ban champions like that from blue side, it means that you want a priority first pick, but there's just so many OP champions that I feel like it's not as advantageous on this patch as it was on other patches.
I mean, sure, we have the majors, the flex majors here still available, Ryze and Lissandra being the best, and of course Ever has showed that they can play the Kassadin in the top lane also. Yeah, we have said that Lissandra is probably like a really good first pick here just because of how she flexes, because I don't think the Ryze is going to go through. It should be banned in my eyes, but...
I actually like the Kalista ban, because those two games we saw Kalista in,
it was
so potent.
It's the setup for the Nidalee pick.
It very well could be.
It's coming, it's coming.
Let's compare the two power picks then. In my opinion, I would prefer Lissandra over Ryze, simply because of what Froscorin mentioned earlier, with the fact that Lissandra is very good on tagging on to the Ryze in the laning phase, because Ryze has a rough time, he has a short range, and you can kind of grab onto him and stun him and lock him down.
Big thing is also the wave clear, the #1 counter to Ryze, or not necessarily a hard counter, is to keep him locked down in lane just because his wave clear suffers in those early levels. So Lissandra having that innate pushing ability has amazing roam potential and can follow Ryze pretty safely.
So what do you think about Ever then banning that Lissandra so they don't take it, but that does leave that Ryze open?
The thing is, I don't think they should have banned anything, and they tried to like set up for the Trundle pick right now, but they can just go into like Trundle and what else is open?
I feel like they should go for the Trundle and the jungle pick right away. I feel like that would be the biggest, like, best choice, and because Trundle is really, really good into Ryze, of course.
And a Tristana insta-lock coming out.
I like that. There's one reason, because we said it yesterday, where Ryze is like short range, and he counters all the short range AD carries, but Tristana gives that range, so you can actually win team fights against the Ryze and can just outrange him.
All right.
Likewise, the displacement with Alistar. 100% agree. It's the idea that you have the long range AD carry.
I actually don't like this at all. I feel like
Trundle would have been a better pick,
so much better,
because you can still flex it. We have complimented Ever on being like the flex gods, and
it is like H2K. They first picked Alistar yesterday, and they played a lot of Tristana. In the end, they got banned in the final game of the series. Like they're carrying on the soul of H2K somehow into this draft.
Shin here.
Yeah.
Keep for QG.
Yeah, I think you could do Shin or you could do Trundle, but I like Shin simply because with Rek'Sai and Ryze, you're still offering the flex ability, but you also have so much global control if you put Shin into that support position, as well as the Void Scream ultimate from Rek'Sai. And Ever have shown that they love to play around the double teleport, that they love to make these macro plays. I just think it'd be perfect.
They do not have to play Shen though, because if Ever picks Shen right now away, then it's like 100% guaranteed in the top lane, which gives them like a good matchup. So I think QG not picking up the Shen is actually like good, because they can still opt into that later in the draft without giving away anything else. Right now, they can still do anything with their team comp. So I actually like that they didn't pick up the Shen here and went for the safe, stable jungle pick, Swift, the Rek'Sai. I want to see that. I like the Rek'Sai pick a lot here, and MF just to not give away anything.
Yeah, so far QG definitely kind of picking that up so far in this weekend on how to play the draft phase out, not showing their cards too early unless it's do or die time. Of course, like we saw yesterday with the Fiora first pick.
I like the pickup of Kassadin here,
I like it too.
Simply because QG has shown that they prefer to go for that double AP. Zombie is probably going to opt in for that Victor, and Kassadin does phenomenally into that. When you have Elise on your side, the stronger jungle matchup, then Kassadin can go through lane phase very, very easily, and then eventually just outscale everything on the map.
The thing is, what they want to do probably is just they want to get away, like they want to get the Kassan away from the Ryze in this matchup, because if the Ryze is going to end up ending mid, and the Kassan, you said the Ryze has a really good matchup with the Kassan right now. So if Ever picks up the Kassan right now, they can still flex it probably to the top side if QG is opting for like something else, right?
But the problem, we haven't seen Doinby play Ryze this tournament. It's always gone into the top lane. And while I like the Ryze in top lane, it kind of, you have to put in perspective Doinby's champion pool.
You play with Victor.
Well, yeah.
All right.
His most played champion is Victor. I believe in the LPL he's 15-7 on that champion. Again, it kind of goes back to QG Reaper's identity of the team fight and just Doinby laying down as much damage as possible in that AoE.
Okay.
It's pretty much Victor Kassadin is what he plays.
What support would be really good here? It's like the Trundle is still open, not being picked, but I don't think Trundle would it make too much sense?
Or Soraka?
Okay.
Going for the lane bully, man. Soraka Mosforge is like really good in lane actually, and can just bully out every single matchup probably. But she's obviously fairly weak to ganks, and if the Elise actually focuses on that Soraka, she can get like really easy kills here in that bot lane.
Yeah, that bot lane's super immobile right now, both between MF and Soraka.
And it's something that, like, we complimented Ever's like macro play earlier on, and something that Soraka is very, very weak in is the lane swap situations, because she cannot provide any pressure at all. Her roaming is very, very poor. She's basically an ambulance running around the Summoner's Rift.
Everybody's favorite, of course. And then, all right, Ever kind of toying with the idea of having a Fiora. How do you see the Fiora here if they were to pick it up?
I think the Fiora is pretty decent, because right now QG has like a really good team fighting team, and against Soraka you don't want to team fight, and you have like a backline threat of Kassan, of course, but I think their plan should be just 1-3-1 them to death with like the Kassan and Fiora on the side lanes and make sure to split them up, but that's not going to happen because they're going to go straight for the Jarvan pick.
The Michael Jarvan.
Okay.
But the thing is, I feel like the Jarvan makes a bit of sense simply because they have the Elise. It's going to be so easy to tag onto this Ryze whenever they're in lane, and especially I want Athena to end up on the teleport so they can contest that split push later on in the game. So I heavily favor the Ever draft right here.
The Ever draft, the Jarvan makes a lot of sense in that regard, because for immobile champions, whoever Jarvan locks up in the mid game should die instantly. There's no mobility on QG's team, so I can see why Jarvan as a top lane pick might be really good if they actually manage to play around the top lane. And we have said over and over again, Ever's a team that know how to play to their win conditions, so I actually expect a lot of top lane focus right now and take the 2-2 against the Ryze Rek'Sai.
All right. Yeah, well, Ever, all that CC on Ever definitely looking a little bit scary for QG's competition, but we'll find out how this first game goes. Once again, it is a best of 5 between QG and Ever, fighting for the title of Intel Extreme Masters Cologne champions. Game 1 will start right after this.
Yes, folks, welcome back to IEM Cologne. It is the grand final. It is Ever versus QG. My name is Mitch Uber-Leslie. I've got a Sinner to the left of me, a Joker to the right, of course. Papa Smithy, Pyrotechnics joining me for this, which is going to be an incredible first game. I mean, even pick and ban gave us a bit of a spicy prelude to what's going to be coming up.
I mean, the likes of Soraka coming through in the draft, not picked, not banned before, barred, banned away, but we still get to see the Soraka. And then the last pick, Jarvan. And if I'm going to have one prediction, and look, I'll have more, but my first prediction, that's going to be a full damage Jarvan.
That's right. I mean, scary stuff, of course. This lane has been looking quite strong from QG as well, of course. Yeah. Soraka being pulled into the mix here as well. So, the early game, interesting times.
It's a very squishy comp, but because you see on the side of Ever they have this really damaged wombo combo. We're going to pick somebody off really quickly and take them out of the fight. This is what QG does best, is team fight. But if they're going to have to be 4v5ing the entire time, this could be Ever's game.
I mean, you just talk about the potential ganks up top lane. That's an Elise Jarvan. The cocoon hits, that'd be the flag and drag combo, potentially the ultimate coming through, the cataclysm as well. Massive burst damage coming through. And you looked at the Rise, and the thing that was striking out to me is I saw the Rise and I was like, okay, you kind of need flank for this comp if you want to do any sort of team fighting. But any melee champion really struggles in the Rise matchup. As on the screen we can see, people are liking that draft from Ever.
Yeah, I mean, even beforehand, Chobra alluded to the fact that a lot of people getting behind Ever here. I mean, we saw Dwayne B. He picked that Victor into a Cassidy. He knew what he was getting himself into here.
Yeah. I mean, this is a team, too, that's really come out of literally nowhere to completely wow Western audiences and Korean audiences and, all over the world, really, alike, knocking off of SK Telecom, knocking off CJ Entis in the Kespa Cup, and now making it all the way here through the finals. Yes, they only had to play one best of 3, but, man, they played it well.
They absolutely did, but you look at the draft, and what you were alluding to there, Uber, is the fact that the one situation where there was a counter pick available for Chaogu, they opted into Victor against Cassidy. And that's just a matchup that gets worse and worse for the Victor. Okay, the line wave clear puts him in great stead at one item. When he starts to upgrade his Hex, can get that immediate wave clear, but after that point comes through, Cassidy has a lot of options in terms of dealing with him with his hyper mobility. And then when the counter pick was available, they needed a flank option. They probably needed a melee champion. They went for the Jarvan, who has that strong ganking synergy with the jungler, and also with the teleport can make a lot of work getting a pick in the late game.
Absolutely, and I really like the way that Ever rounded out the composition with the Tristana. Yes, it was picked very early, very first, in fact, but this means that once they actually do take down a member or two, they can then start wrecking towers so much quicker. If you had taken something like a Sivir to round out the pick and chase composition, it would have been that much harder to press your advantage once you get the pick. Tristana has been proving an incredibly powerful AD carry and well-rounded in this composition, in this meta that we're currently in.
Do you think it's necessary here for Ever to actually initiate a lane swap, of course, going up against Soraka, going up against Misfortune there as well? Obviously, a strong lane, I think, set up here for QG. Do you think that would be where Ever wants to go?
I mean, it's a hard-pressed question to ask. Now, Ryze is a champion who, if he's 2v1, is very easy to dive, and Jarvan, for a melee champion, has surprisingly a good wave clear. Like Olaf, he has a Q ability that he can poke minions from range. Okay, it sometimes pushes the lane if he can't just poke that individual minion, but he deals arguably better than Ryze in a lane swap, which is crazy given the range versus melee matchup. He's also very good to gank for, as we mentioned, in both the 1v1 and could also be a factor in some sort of 2v1 situation. We had a note that the lobby had to be remade, so we're going to have a bit of a delay getting into game. But the lane swap, it's a possibility. Ever's shown that they can go for those aggressive lane swaps. They did that in game 1 yesterday, but I'm just excited to get it all out in the Rift and specifically see, how does this Soraka go? Do you opt into 2v2 laning against a Soraka?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, too. If you want a 2v2, you're definitely going to have a rough time, especially when you have a Tristana Alistar lane. But the downside is if you do opt for the swap, you can go ahead and try to shut down the Ryze early on, but you give pretty much free leeway for the MF to catch up, getting into a mid-game situation that you have a very powerful combo enabling champion. You are still able to heal post level 6 with Soraka across the board, so it's going to be hard to just shut down an individual target. Whereas if you focus the 2v2 and then send your jungle pressure down bot, remember, we've also got the Jarvan with the teleport available, and once again, I think everything is going to get really exciting at level 6. Before then, I think the swap is really valuable in favor of Ever, though.
Do you think, I mean, as we see this game sort of go ahead, and we've seen what the pick and ban is, who do you think really, we've talked about Ever, great pick and ban, even Linko actually, had to give due respect to that. Do you think, again, it's a case of Ever having drafted this really well, kind of hard to call for me personally, seeing so many different picks coming in.
I think the analyst desk kind of hit the nail on the head. They were surprised with the first round of picks coming through from everyone on the red side. You know, yesterday, it was Flex City, 3 Flex picks in the first 4. This time, they locked in the Alistair, and you knew, okay, that's definitely going to be a support pick. The Alistair, when the Trundle was available, amazingly, Trundle goes through picks and bans. It's a champion that was frequently banned in all our other series, not picked or banned, despite the fact that it would have been a strong pick in the early rotation. Shows that Xiaogu and Eva both not prioritizing that right now. I feel like when a counter pick was made available, remember, it was a blind pick cast by Eva, Doinbe's locking in the Victor. That's comfort over looking for matchups. So that's already not being able to pick up a counter pick. And then the Jarvan, okay, it's not truly a counter pick against Ryze, but it's a champion that can really get snowballed ahead, and it provides another threat. And Crazy, this is a player who's shown yesterday and more recently the carry side. He can play the tanks as well, and I could be wrong. We could still see a more tanky Jarvan, but I'm expecting more carry out of Crazy in the top lane.
Yeah, and this is the guy that lives up to his name. He will go deep, he will go ham, and Jarvan's a great champion to do it on when they can actually catch everyone in this really, really intense burst composition that they've got built here. More to the point, however, of QG and the locking in of the Victor, yeah, this has really just been a constant influences that much. And I feel like going forward, especially though in this best-of-5 series, it could really burn QG here.
I mean, the narrative in general forever has been mastery of patches. We look at them on 521. That was the Kesper Cup patch. They knew all the meta champions. They were able to flex. For example, you look at their mid laner, Athena. He was playing Kassadin. He was playing Gangplank. He was playing Ryze. Those were the strongest picks. He played them all to a high degree. Now we come to 523. Once again, they're showing a mastery of the picks. And Xiaogu, the biggest question mark against them has been the champion select, especially, whether it was last series, blind picking the Fiora, early priority on Fiora, despite the fact that the top lane meta has been changing. Doinbe, specifically, if he doesn't get Kassadin, he's been locking in Victor. That's been basically his only champion, regardless of matchup. Okay, it has safe wave clear, you can be conservative with it, but if you don't have these extra strategies, if you don't have the depth of champion pool, Xiaogu, this is the first real curveball they've sent the whole tournament, and that's a Soraka support.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually talked about on the desk that, you know, Frost pointed out the difference between a champion pool and an effective champion pool.
Sure.
Also pointed out as well that QG haven't used Ryze in a flex capacity, or they haven't even implied that they would do that, with Doinbe always going for that Victor pick if he's not able to get Kassadin.
Yeah, it really gives them it's in the same way with the Victor. It's a lot of telegraphing when they do their pick and ban phase that gives Ever even more information than they necessarily should have. That's a latent advantage. But the real question here, and I want to pose this to you, Papa Smithy.
I'm listening.
What is QG trying to do with this composition?
Well, I think QG in general are looking for the team fight. They have a lot of lane dominance with the Misfortune Soraka. We're going to get the answer to that question very soon. Ever, they're the one with the most consistent composition. They're looking for picks. The 5v5 to get enough items, certainly an option, but specifically the jungle top lane synergy. That's what I'm going to be watching to see.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see on your screen, it is ESC, Eva, and QG Reapers are just preparing themselves now. It's time to jump into the rift for game number 1 of this grand final. It is a best of 5. It's going to be QG on the blue side, Eva on the red. To see now if anything really escalates or develops at all in these early stages.
One thing you might find surprising as a viewer is that we see our first Soraka laning competitive for quite a while. Misfortune Soraka. Misfortune's one of those champions next to Caitlyn, who has a lot of lane supremacy. She's a lane dominant champion, more so than Tristana. But you might think, okay, you're laning against Soraka. Maybe you're expecting a 2v2. Why do we see the exhaust on Alistair? Usually we'd expect Ignite in a Soraka lane, but with the Grievous Wounds changes, you don't actually get a reduction in Soraka's healing if you ignite the Misfortune. Okay, it reduces the summoner spell heal, but it's only reducing selfish healing, not Soraka's heals. And that's why the value of Ignite in Soraka lanes has definitely gone down.
Kings now, of course, is TCT is not really looking for anything. In fact, both of these two teams are forming that line of scrimmage straight down the middle of the map, Doinbe as well. No one going for those deep wards.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable in the first game of the series that they'd be a little bit more conservative to try and not get anything really crazy early done. And QG has been a team that, you know, isn't necessarily afraid of that, but remember, this is the grand final here at IEM Cologne. There is a lot on the line. Yes, both these teams will be going to Katowice in the next year, but, you know, you always got to consider that prize money and the eternal glory. If Ever can win another tournament, this will be their first international win as well.
And that's a significant factor. And the thing we haven't mentioned, something that's been slept upon, is that, remember, we've talked a bit about the fact this is a semi-professional team. crucially, they did not qualify for Champion Spring next year. There has actually never been an international win for a semi-professional team. The closest when it comes to lower-ranked teams is back at IEM Sao Paulo, 2013, I believe it was. Longzhou IEM won that tournament as a 5th to 8th seed in the LCK. But when it comes to a semi-pro team, it's uncharted territory.
Well, and the really crazy thing about it is, you know, even their opponents, the Xiaogu Reapers, have only been a professional team for one split of competitive play. Playing in the LSPL before that, and then eventually getting up to a high level of dominance in the LPL Summer 2015. But whoever wins this tournament, it will absolutely be massive.
Has been said as well that EVA and a lot of teams that are in the secondary or that semi-pro tier in Korea struggle very much finding sponsors and really establishing themselves as an org. So for them, a springboard into 2016, and it could all start here. It's Swift now going over for that Scuttle Crab. Athena, Dwinby would be trading back and forth here, and Papa, like he said, right now this matchup looks relatively even, but it gets worse and worse for that Victor.
It's always a sliding scale for Caston lanes. Rek'Sai's looking into bottom, considering his options.
Swift might go for something early here as well. He's going to get the Umbaro under a key as well. He does get locked up in that one. Make It Rain comes down, and the flash is forward for Key. He's trying to get the heck out. Looks like he'll just make it there. No more Prey Seeker from Swift as he does burrow down and head back.
A little bit of return damage fired down onto Swift. Ares was looking to come in for the counter engage, but it was over before he could get there. However, Key and Loken will be very, very careful not to over-push this lane again, considering what just happened.
You want to put a lot of pressure onto the Soraka, you know, threaten the all-in if you're Alistair, but now with your flash down, have to be so much more conservative in your positioning. Swift's just being a nuisance. Wants to deny the quick pickup of the blue buff. Big factor, and what opens up Rek'Sai for these aggressive moves early. Okay, level 2, level 3 ganks are not that surprising, but the big factor is Rek'Sai doesn't actually want to clear his own blue because he can just pass it over to a laner, doesn't need it for his jungle clear. So often you'll see these staggered blue timers as Ares, Swift, and both teams start to tangle around mid lane.
On multiple occasions, Swift has been forced to burrow away. He's finding himself, I mean, for other junglers, would otherwise be a compromising position, but he's been happy enough just to be that nuisance, like you said. Dwinby having to deal with Ares as well, just coming into mid lane, a couple autos towards him, just to keep him honest.
And Athena's actually been able to catch back up and farm quite well in this game. And you know, at the very beginning, obviously, we always talk about Caston has a little bit of a rougher laning phase against someone who has a lot of wave clear like Victor. But Athena is definitely not going to have too much trouble now, as he's gotten not only a little help from Ares, he's been able to push in himself. And Dwinby will have to watch himself if he wants to try and take this lane down and get himself an advantage going into the mid game.
The solution for Caston's rough laning phase has traditionally been jungle pressure. You have to opt into an equal or greater jungle matchup if you are going to lane a Caston. And for example, the Elise, one of the strongest jungle pressure champions in the game, between herself and Rek'Sai. Bit of a line ball there. A bit of trading happens in bottom. Whenever the damage is on TNT, you know it's going to be healed up quickly, so it's not too much of a statistic, but that's the big thing about what Swift's doing. When Swift was contesting blue buff, that means that he has eyes on Ares. He has eyes on the Elise. That means that you can expect in the mid lane the flow-on effect to be Victor to chip damage with auto attacks, not have to be worried about Elise ganks. Honestly, it means the same thing in the top lane, just because if you know where Elise is, you can afford to overextend if you're Victor, and you can force to overextend if you're Ryze, because if you know that the Elise isn't in the top side, you're not worried about the potential CC train that is Elise plus Jarvan.
Right, and avoiding that early Elise pressure is also going to be very key for Xiaogu. And, you know, Swift will have a little bit more utility all game long. Yes, of course, Ares... Elise is still a very powerful champion throughout all stages of the game. It's why she's been such an important pick for such a while now, but still feel if you avoid this damage early on, you're in a much better shape coming out of the laning phase than you would be, of course, otherwise.
I mean, the big difference between the two is that the Tremor Sense, one of those things you can't itemize for, having that permanent vision as Athena, and take a bit of trade damage, trying to force the Caston out of lane.
You see this from Dwinby all the time. And the moment he can, he lands down the Chaos Storm. Even if it's just to zone away his opponent, you can see he's built that CS lead back up again. Key is coming in, though, through the lane, looking for Dwinby. Won't find him enough, though.
All right, TCT was there in the periphery as well, just to ward off any potential aggression. And Swift, honestly, who spent more time in Ever's jungle than his own, just constantly, like you said, not necessarily contesting things like blue, but keeping tabs on the movement of Ares and other Ever players in the jungle.
We mention it. Allowing Dwinby to be more aggressive and relieving pressure from Ryze just by focusing on his jungle matchup. It's a smart move from Swift, and it just means that the CS advantage is there for Crazy, because just the nature of Jarvan means he has a lot of burst threat, but it's not as massive as it could be if Ares had the free time to show himself in the top lane.
When, though, is it that Crazy is going to start actually making plays outside of his lane? Because this laning phase could continue for quite a while unabated, and I think that favors QG here. When is Ever going to make a play?
question about the late game. You know, you look at the champions here, Rise and Cassidy. It's a bit of a line ball between those two. Maybe Rise with a slight advantage, but Cassidy with so much potential with his riff walk. In the late game, honestly, comparing these two comps, you'd say that perhaps Jarvan falls off more than Victor if we're going to compare champions in the late game. Misfortune versus Tristana, you give the Tristana the advantage there. It's pretty even across the board.
Oh, Cataclysm being used there by Crazy to try and close the gap, but there's a very quick reaction from V, getting out with that flash, and no chance for Ares to actually make his presence felt. Athena also moving up towards his top side as well. They might want to link it.
I don't think they saw him on the backside, so Athena and Ares could actually go in, but they're just going to grab a little bit of vision in the blue side jungle of QG, and then head back towards the mid. Doonby is wandering in that direction, but he spots him with the pink ward.
The biggest overarching question mark is what does a damaged Jarvan do in the late game? Gamsu, actually another player at this tournament, played a lot of it for Dignitas. We saw a bit of it in the LPL as well. I believe it was Lepney playing it there, though I don't quite remember, and it can be super effective just because when you pile on damage, even Infinity Edge is a potential item you can pick up as full damage Jarvan. If you're swapping your life for Misfortunes, if you're swapping your life for Rises, that's a fair one-for-one trade when you have a Tristana and Cassidy backing you up. It's still a question mark though, just because you build damage, you're not that effectively tanky, you're melee and you're jumping right in between the Flag and Dragon, the ultimate. Those games so polarizing for the damage job.
But being able to be still a pertinent threat as that Jarvan towards the late game is important to neutralize the enemy. It's a Rune Prison for V, as obviously he is running a little bit low on mana, and there's the flash in response here. Both these top laners quite jumpy about making sure they don't get caught.
As a rough place to be, Rune Prison, to be honest, right in front of a massive line of minions, and then tanking it for a few seconds, and really meant that he had no choice but to flash away in that situation. TCT will throw down a little bit of damage to start off the Dragon. Now to try and save his pink ward, he goes in, looks for Key. There is the Make It Rain, and they're going for it.
They're going to be able to catch him as well. A lot of damage going towards Key. Doesn't yet have his unbreakable will, so he is having to scuttle his way out of that one. Taking a fair bit of damage, and you can see both bot lanes here as well, quite eager to follow each other on any sort of rotations towards mid of the jungle.
We saw Eva clear out a pink ward just there. Ironically, they had 4 on the map at one point. They have put down QG, that is, have had 4 at one point just a couple of moments ago on the map. So they've really focused on permanent vision. This is a trend we expect with pink wards being so cheap. But it's good to see ChowGu step up with the meta, whether it was champion select and then just indeed playing to their win conditions over the course of this tournament. This is a team that looked a little bit out of their depth, especially against Dignitas game 1 of the entire IEM Cologne. But they've been stepping it up, and the results, they paint a picture.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the vision was just one aspect of it. You mentioned the champion selection. Everything QG has been improving at. I believe it was Frostgren that said it. They played to the level of their opponents, and Ever has been on another level. So far, we've seen them this tournament. Dignitas, of course, looked very tough for QG to face off against. But once they then faced off against Fnatic, it seemed like a completely different team. Yes, Fnatic made a slew of mistakes, but QG took advantage of them like a team that is much more experienced than they are.
Now, Swift knows there's a lot of pings towards the top side here because that Gromp has consistently been missing for Swift. He knows that Ares is spending time around that blue, and there are a lot of blue side pings as well towards the top of that river. So Ares was hoping to team up with Crazy there to maybe jump on V, but a little bit too canny for them there as Doinby getting himself a blue.
One of the strengths of Ares and kind of one of his weaknesses, one thing you can definitely point to is he's one of these junglers that's happy to sit in a brush just to create pressure for laners. He's done it consistently.
So Ares going to be going on towards Swift here. It was an Unburrow to get away, and even all the Crazy going forward is going to use that Cataclysm to try and lock up V, but maybe more damage coming back than he would have thought. Ares now going to get involved, and there's the Unburrow, the first blood to V, and he just survives by the skin of his teeth.
Narrow escape there, but Crazy, he might not be done yet. He's got to run away as fast as he can, taking away from the red buff, goes in. That's going to be Doinby coming out of nowhere to pick him off.
The roam coming through from Doinby, very much on point. It's a champion is comfortable with, and that shows in his roam timing. Rise, his potential to 1v2. We usually talk about it in the late game, just with a Catalyst and a Tier at the time. Turns around, chunks out 2. An excellent jungle pathing from Swift means the first 2 kills onto QG.
I was about to say, this is one of the longest non-lane swaps we've seen in a game with QG. That has resulted in no first blood at 10 minutes, and it immediately changes. Turns right around. Excellent play from QG. They're the ones that immediately start off the action.
What's the consequence of this, though? Do we see any meaningful changes coming out of that fight there in the top lane?
I mean, Rice getting online earlier is always significant. The big factor to talk about is the target selection. Ironically, it was Swift who face check, took a lot of damage, then they changed target. It was Crazy who initiated the fight, just going in for the Cataclysm.
TCT trying to catch up Loken there as well. He does get rooted in place, but it was a good head butt from Key to make sure TNT was out of that way. He was low on mana as well, but Loken taking a lot of damage, and even doing B being drawn towards the bottom side, but so is Ares.
You can see that Ever are not experienced at laning against Soraka. That's 2 times, one from Key, one from Loken, where the snare field coming out from the E is actually applied. They've just been staying too long in that ability. It's so easy to get away from if you have experience playing against it, but just trying to play at the limits of the ability is...
Ew, nice headbutt to knock him away from the bullet time, but that was a narrow miss for Loken. Ares he's here for backup, but they might just try to push on this as far as they can. Now that he shows face, they back away.
Still a healthy tower there as well, so QG maybe just wanting to back away. TNT hoping to get maybe, well, a little bit of a cheeky snipe towards Loken. He was lingering on low health. He's able to survive that, and that duo will back up, and so will Ares.
I guess the big takeaway, as I was returning to my point about the top lane, is that the communication between Crazy and Ares, one of the cornerstones of their victory in the Kesper Cup. The fact that Ares was playing around this lane and then they gave up 2 kills, it affects the mindset, but it just puts behind the full damage job, and that, again, can have a very inconsistent impact in the late game. Still going to be able to cultivate a CS advantage, but it's not growing to the extent he might have hoped for in the top lane.
Jarvan's just not going to be able to do as much solo anyways. They really want to come together as a team, but this has always been QG's forte, is coming together and fighting together. But as we heard from their coach, that they think Ever is just as good at this, that, you know, they're practically perfect in every regard. I mean, that's a lot of respect coming out for this Korean squad.
Justifiably, QG coming with some more interesting things towards the champion select, however, don't get to play it exactly the way they wanted to, and it's TCT. A little housework done here as well. Does see Key off towards the side, and will harass him, so will be wards cleared.
Ever did end up with double teleport. Something we haven't talked about, but between the double teleport, it means that in the late game, the 1-3-1 will be a very real thing, but how will Crazy fare in an offlane against Ryze? Or will it be Athena that's sent against Ryze? It's stacking magic resist from Crazy. Of course, the magic damage shield comes through from the Cassin, so they have options. If you take double teleport, which has been consistently the trend from Ever, we have the statistic that they are 10-0, specifically Athena running mid lane teleport. They did it even on Varus earlier, we saw in yesterday's series. It gives them so many options in the late game. They've offered a bit of a lead in the early game to QG. Only kills, because it might actually be the first dragon over to Ever.
Looks like that's going to be the case. So misfortune, TNT was trying to push them off of it, but nothing doing. Key will take a little bit of extra damage, but they do secure that first dragon. They're only down about 700 gold at this 14.5-minute mark. But more to your point about who's going to deal with this Ryze, I think you got to send multiple people. The problem is, if he does want to split push, that means it draws a lot of attention away from other parts of the map, and QG can do a 4-1 quite easily.
Dina constantly trying to harass Doinb, even taking a tower hit there just to make sure that Victor couldn't recall as quickly as he would have liked, and as a result, Doinb is still in this lane and has looking worse for wear in terms of mana. He doesn't have that catalyst protector, he's not going to have that extra sustain. He'd like to be able to leave when he can, and Athena just wants to exploit that as long as possible.
So just keeping the laning phase go. Athena has the flexibility to teleport, to stagger his back, isn't as predictable in his roaming as Doinb is. The pressure around mid has been the consistent story of this game, and despite the fact that for much of the early game, Swift had the pressure supremacy, specifically invading and getting eyes onto Ares, Athena has actually cultivated a CS advantage in the mid lane, in a Caston lane, which any player knows, whatever the matchup, offering Caston a CS advantage, the fact that he's taken a combat summoner, Doinb, and Athena has the teleport, bodes poorly as we scale on for QG.
It certainly does, and Doinb has not had a whole lot of help from his team either, since there has been a little bit of early gank pressure that was focused on Ever's side towards that middle. Yes, it didn't result in a kill, but, you know, Doinb has had to do it on his own. If he wants to go up top and give a little bit extra for himself, that was his prerogative, and that's how he secured that kill, but nothing so much in the lane.
To note as well that ESC are proceeding with 3 of those yellow warding trinkets here as well, not really, you know, falling in with the League of Blue trinkets adage at this stage.
I mean, it's just a timer thing. It might be due to back timers. I haven't watched Loken and Ares closely, but we're expecting 4 blue trinkets, 1 red, given that we're in 523. There's some more ideas available in 524. We see a slight nerf towards the blue trinket. You can see already starting on the side of QG to get more of those blue trinkets. I just think the power of that particular trinket on patch 523 means that once the back timers come in, once it hits the 25-minute mark, it's going to be much more predictable, closer to the 4-1 or maybe the 3-2 when it comes to blue to red trinkets.
I mean, we've been talking a lot about the early game here as well. We're starting to hit towards that 17-minute mark here. Nothing but 2 kills over towards QG and the 1 dragon to Ever. So where do you guys really see this peace and quiet breaking down?
That's a great point. I mean, we haven't seen any towers this late in the start of the game, and that is a little bit, I think, troubling for a team like Ever, who maybe needs to make the first point, but we'll look as Loken is looking for TNT, jumps for the flash, though.
Yeah, Rocket jump forward and TNT there. The moment that TCT wasn't there, and of course, he and Key have both been going up towards that red side of QG's jungle and dealing with wards, so an opening there that ESC weren't quite able to take advantage of.
It's a bit of a surreal game, given that we've seen multiple games, let's say 4 or 5 turrets down by the 15-minute mark. Turret trades definitely not happy in this game, despite the Tristana. But given, of course, was really focusing on the turret execution with the Tristana rather than just powering down the laning phase. Double teleport means that once we see a fight, things will change depending on how many of those global summoners are used. But what's actually going to force that first teleport? Speaking of...
So towards the top lane here as well. Is Athena actually not really wanting to do too much? She may be crazy, feeling as he's being shoved in slightly, maybe premature, but see Doinby as well, trying to match his motion up towards the top side. Perhaps a return towards a mid is in order.
And that's exactly what's happening. Teams are attempting to mirror each other, and as a result, there hasn't been much action and counteraction. The 2 kills notwithstanding, as Athena looks for Doinby, trades back and forth, but there really just isn't a lot of push pressure either way. And until one of these 2 teams starts grouping more than 2 or 3 members, it's not going to change.
We have Key and Loken actually making a move towards the mid now as well. Perhaps satisfied that, no, it's Key just going back to do it again. Put down a pink ward, clear that one out. It's going to cause TCT to have to come up as well, as we see on our screen here. So, again, teams being brought head-to-head, neither really wanting to go for that big fight. The respect between these 2 is palpable.
Yeah, it's just the stage, you know. It is a best of 5, something we didn't really mention. So it's going to be a long series, it's going to develop from here. Maybe we'll see more of the trademark flexing from Ever when it comes to their champion select. Not to say that there's anything they've done particularly wrong here. It was just not at the same level of mystery as we saw in the previous series yesterday.
Well, you know, Papa Smithy, no one expects the banana, and Ever definitely least of all this time. However, they were the ones pulling out some trickery yesterday against H2K with that Vayne pickup at the very end. I think that surprised a lot of people.
Just the value of the Soraka still remains to be considered. You saw in a moment where Misfortune had to flash in lane TNT, instantly healed up. That's the power of the Soraka. But Soraka in a team fight where you have the likes of Crazy on the job, and the Elise, Kassadin, all these champs, even Alistar can all get in and get in the face of Soraka and either zone her out of a fight or instant kill her. She's, of course, a very brittle champion who's just trying to skirt around the backline, utilizing her passive and the immediate and massive mobility that gives her in terms of movement speed. What Soraka shows outside a laning phase, basically Soraka's designed to guarantee you a laning phase victory, specifically combined with a lane dominant champion like Misfortune. 23 CS for a champion that in the late game can be super powerful or can just be singled out by the assassins on Ever, specifically with double teleport leading to a flank. I'm going to expect that Ever will have a high kill priority on the Soraka first and then deal with the other members of ChowGu.
You see, before we even get to that point now, both these teams, you see there's a tendency to use those summoners very, very quickly. They're not really holding them back if they feel like there's even a remote chance that they could go down or be threatened straight on that F4D key and getting the heck out of dodge.
Absolutely. I mean, the reaction time for both these teams is quite excellent, but they just have absolutely no hesitation. And it's one of the differences that you see generally between Western and Eastern teams is sometimes Western teams will, and lump NA and EU a little bit together here, hold back a summoner if they think they can escape, and it doesn't always work out that way. These 2 teams, definitely not the case.
I think we can all sit back. I think we can all relax. If you don't know that, by 20 minutes only showing 2 kills and no structure kills, it's been a very, very quiet early game. And that's still my question is, what will prompt that first fight? Teams are posturing around Dragon, but we still haven't seen anywhere near a full committal to an objective 20 minutes into a game. It's just ludicrous to think of, given the context of this tournament.
And QG as well. I mean, these are guys that love to fight all the time, and every time we haven't seen a lane swap, they've been very quick to try and take the kills, and they haven't grouped up for it. I think they might be worried about the potential of losing a member quickly with this, frankly, assassination composition from Ever.
And this has almost become a current trend as well, that skirmishing around these objectives, even ones as such as wards, is more common than people going in and trying to get the fight as well. It's make sure you can counter their wards with your own, being there, maybe throw in, you know, a cheeky auto attack or a Q or something. But that full committal, it seems like teams are far more reluctant to actually make those here. The ambient gold, of course, being increased as well, and people hitting those spikes a bit earlier on. Maybe some more chaos in the mix, in the background at least.
The only small window we get in terms of how these teams expect to play out, say, the mid to late game, is that Athena's gone for Sheen second. He's looking like he's going to go for the Lich Bane. That's more of a split pushing build, looking to exploit the teleport that he's picked up, rather than say the Zonias try and dive in, throw out a burst of damage, and then decrease aggro from the likes of a Rise Snare. So it looks like split push will be in order. QG, they interrupt the dragon, they pick it up, but first dragon, not a big consideration.
One thing we did see yesterday against H2K is that Ever were actually happy to go for those dragons and apply that. And like you said, Papa, it was very much a sleeping, slumbering lion. But they were going for that dragon. They had actually 4 dragons to none at one point here as well. So if there's any way that they can gather even pressure in a small way, it looks like they're going to try and do it. But QG managed to push them off.
Yeah, just bringing more members to the party, and Ares wasn't able to do a whole lot more on his own. And you can see in the Vision game, too, that both these teams have been prioritizing up and down the river, but not going too far to their jungle, as Loken takes a lot of damage, trades back to TNT, but there's the heal, and it's all for naught.
Triumphant Roar not really giving as much heal, of course, as that. But here comes Swift in towards the bottom lane. It's a decent little knock up there. He did get headbutted back, and there's the ball time cutting across. Another knock up there. Key, though, he's surrounded by 3. Everyone's going to get involved in this one as the teleport comes down on that bottom turret. But it looks like it'll be all for naught. ESC have managed to stave off this aggression, but Dunby might be caught out here. Yes, he's going to get jumped on. It wasn't quite a cocoon there, but he blows him up in a matter of seconds. The Cataclysm comes down, and Crazy is in the middle.
He absolutely is crazy that time. A double kill over to Dunby. QG come up with so much more, and Swift, it looked like he didn't even notice Loken for a second. Turns back around. He can grab the blue buff. This is a big swing for QG.
The burst damage coming onto Ares was insane. This is a Runeglaive, at least, not like the Cinderhawk, at least we saw yesterday, and instantly died to the burst from just a couple of hex score upgrades and the Rylai's. Massive damage means that finally, with all those teleports channeled, with that action, we are going to see some structures roll down. It's the first 2 of the game, and suddenly out of nowhere, a 4,000 gold lead cultivated by Gu.
4 kills to 0, and Swift just bails the heck out at Dodge. Goes for the farm back in his own side of the jungle. And QG Reapers up on the board ahead of Ever in the start of this best-of-5 series.
And you have to say 0 for 2 on the aggressive players from the melee range assassin. You'd have to say pseudo-assassin in Jarvan. Usually you wouldn't think of Jarvan as assassin, specifically out of the jungle. But when your item build is Ghostblade, Hex Drinker, and a Tiamat, you're only looking for one thing. It's damage, and so far, it's counted for naught.
Yeah, and not only that, Ares is gone with his damage build. You mentioned the Runeglaive, and because of that, Ever doesn't really have anything resembling a true tank.
Hey,
the closest they've got's the Alistar, but that is only really tanky when he throws down his ultimate.
He's got 6 seconds of tankiness.
Yeah,
Come on,
yeah,
now.
but that's not going to last the way QG plays these fights, Papa Smithy.
Fair point.
Of course, his Keystone Mastery as well will be reducing that damage as well by 6% if he's close to his lane partner. It's very common, of course, for that Alistar to be taking at this stage in the game. So, it's 4-0 here in gold. Yeah, it is creeping up. It's 3k the difference here for QG, and they do have 2 turrets to none. So even after a very placid, tentative earlier game, we might start to see things open up a little bit more.
Really smart use of the blue trinket coming through from Ryze. Spotted out the 2 members in top looking to try and pick a kill on Ryze. We're moving away significantly from the part where Ryze is that easy champion you can clip off. They tried it earlier, fed over the first 2 kills of the game, and now Seraph's Embrace and a 10-stack Rod of Ages. Not going to be any assassinations on the Rise anytime soon.
No, and the real big issue here, as QG are going to start a very aggressive Baron.
Doesn't have teleport.
Oh boy. Not to worry. There's the Chaos Storm onto Ares. He might just go down, and this one he's burning away just a little. Spiderlings are taking it up. That's just a distraction, though. Crazy's got to do something now.
That's right. This could be very, very messy. Ares are being so low. They've neutralized that jungle threat. He's caught in the gravity field. Key goes in. Key goes out as quick as he went in. 2 kills down, and the Baron for QG. And very, very clean and impressive stuff from them so far.
They pulled the trigger.
Exactly. They pulled the trigger decisively. This hasn't been something we've seen with any consistency. We've seen it once maybe in the tournament from Gu, but they pulled the trigger. Athena caught with his pants down in bot lane. You might have a lot of mobility on Cassidy, but his teleport was 5 to 10 seconds away, and just a 5 to 10 second gap has changed completely the texture of this game.
You talked about sleeping lions earlier on, Uber, and I mean, this is really the way it went. Ever was caught sleeping for quite a long time this game. You know, I think a lot of people were snoozing on it, and then QG just said, hit the alarm button. We are going in, boys. They get themselves a Baron. They get themselves 2 more kills. So far, they're looking for a perfect game.
And now the poke wave clear from the likes of the Cassidy, from the Q from Jarvan is going to count for nothing. Whenever you have a cast in the mid lane, you look desperately for the likes of Sivir in past metas or other champions with instant wave clear. And right now, if they group and push, barring some sort of miracle flank engage from the like of Crazy, it's going to be watching turrets fall 1 by 1 forever.
So needless to say, a massive power play has now been opened up for QG, and we talked about critical mass. You build up to that critical mass, and all of a sudden, it's an absolute meltdown. 6 kills to none, and of course, about 7k for QG. Baron buff on them as well. See where they want to try and take it, but right now, they're just going to punch down that mid.
Yeah, that's just what they do best. QG, when they group up, they are a force to be reckoned with. With the Baron buff, it makes it even harder for even a Tristana to clear these waves away. They can start pushing deep in the jungle if they want to get some vision, but remember, they're still 3 turrets to 0 here. Ever have not managed to knock down a single structure this game. QG are going for, once again, a perfect game to open this series up.
This is a Tristana that hasn't managed to find a turret kill. It's because Tristana's been anchored in bot lane. Loken has spent basically the entire game 2v2 farming. They haven't been rotating around like we saw H2K employ Forgiven for, where they give up, say, dragon pressure just to pick up early turrets. The lack of a turret game has meant that the gold lead, there's a lot of static gold on the map, and it's all been in the coffers of QG, whereas Ever are falling further and further behind. It's 7,000 gold now.
It's going to be more as well by the time this Baron buff is done. You can see this pressure towards his middle inner turret. And ESC have to give so much space here to QG because of the threat that they have generated.
They can't even return fire. And, you know, you can see this, the cheeky protecting the cannon minion strategy. But Crazy, they know he's on the backside. They know he can come in with the Cataclysm. But no one from Ever wants to commit. They put the fear into this team. And now the semi-professional Korean squad loses another tower. We're 28 minutes into the game. They're pushing on the Nexus turret, guys.
Their comp doesn't have any answer for this sort of pressure unless they expect Crazy to actually be able to pull off and engage. But 2 out of 2 times that he's gone in aggressively with his combo, he has been popped along with one of his allies. So for now, they're just watching their turrets fall down.
Crazy knows the second he goes in, he's going to get eviscerated. Doinb is going to just sarcastically turn his head and let the combo go.
Even TNT feels like he can step up to the plate here. You can see those double ups just starting to hurt. The crits really going. As much as Escape Ever trying to clear the waves, they just can't get it in time. And there's so much damage on the side of QG.
Baron buff is definitely proving to be problematic. And look at this, they're getting this for free. Ever, at least they know they can't fight for this stuff till the game's over, but you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Look, they're sacrificing any hope of controlling the mid game here, hoping that QG is not decisive enough to pull the trigger on finding other standing gold, for example, other outer turrets. They tried that once. They bluffed bottom lane. You saw Athena specifically be the big culprit there. Went bot lane. They thought, okay, QG's not going to go for the Baron. That's not in their blood. Instantly took down the Baron, and now they're rotating off for another easy dragon.
Yeah, but Ever's not far behind. It's a sea of pings as they look to try and make something happen and stop the bleeding here. Athena goes in. Dragon's already down, but ESC looking for more.
The flag and drag missed for Crazy. 2 are caught in the bullet time. Crazy will fall down as well. Not before Loken did. Doinb now being caught. You can see that V did drop. Key has been caught, but a triple kill coming up for TNT. He's going crazy. He's definitely woken up. And Athena can only shake his head in dismay as his team falls to the ground.
The target selection was good. They looked at Soraka, but they ignored the full channel bullet time and coming through from Misfortune. It's only Athena alive. 29 minutes in the death timers. They're pretty respectable on the preseason patch. And this might be it.
They're definitely posturing towards these turrets here as well. TNT takes a bit of damage, but you can see what QG want to do here.
I was talking about Nexus turrets earlier incorrectly, but now they really are pushing for it. Still only Athena up, but the death timers are starting to get a little shorter, and QG aren't going to push their luck just yet, but they do look towards the top side where they have built a solid-sized minion wave.
They're able to back away now with so much gold in the pocket. 4,000 to 7,000 now. 10,000 gold is the advantage. And the flanks from Jarvan, they're just not worth respecting. The misfires from the first 2 just condemn Jarvan to be almost an afterthought. Okay, if he can somehow pile together 6 items, maybe he'll be relevant. Athena's really fishing for a pick. But there's no backup at all.
Absolutely none. No follow-up as well. You can't rely on Crazy as well. We are seeing that, you know, sometimes you see these fed Jarvans and you think, I'd love to be him right now, the things that we can do, but here's the replay of that fight.
We're going to watch the replay. It's good controlling of space. Now watch the target selection. They realize, okay, everyone's going to get around the back. They notice Soraka and think, okay, we'll take her down. But TNT's ult completely kills Ares and the easy double kill. From there, Doinb's just poking around with the Rylai's, keeping the slows. Key's ult runs out, and it's just easy cleanup for the Misfortune.
And the Jarvan ult was even a net negative in that situation. He stuck himself there for a little bit too long and couldn't do much as he was CC'd down and silenced. And ESC Ever, they played so well yesterday, and they made such great decisions. You could argue their pick ban seemed a little bit stronger than QG's just in general, but, well, a lot stronger in general, but stronger this game. But we're seeing QG play an incredibly controlled game, something we hadn't seen from them prior to this tournament, something that we see them evolve into. And against a team that's constantly changing, how can Ever adapt?
It's the big question. The only surprise to me in the draft phase was when it came to the last pick draft, and I can understand the thought behind it, but Crazy is a wonderful Olaf player. He showed it specifically in the Kesper Cup. It felt to me like Olaf was the more reliable version. Now you've committed to full damage. The downside to that, you can see very much on display. Full damage can fall off if you don't have the extra gold income of a snowball, and the turrets just keep rolling over for QG.
It's going to be 7-0 if they manage to take this inhibitor turret right now. Even without Baron buff, QG confident enough coming forward in this cavalier manner as well, spreading plenty of extra damage, and that turret went down to minions, so QG do eventually lose one, but you can see they're more focused on this. It's a 10k gold lead at 32 minutes, and they want this one badly.
Just keep on pushing all they want. Ever did clear the wave away, but it's just a matter of time at this point before it goes down. We're 32 minutes on the clock, and we know that this is about as late as some of these ones have been going. With few exceptions, QG looking to close out game number 1 and put the ball back in Ever's court to try and catch up.
Misfortune's a champion who we talked about as a lane bully, about an early game champion in general, just because in the late game, tanks can kind of wade through the bullet time, feel a bit annoyed, but mostly get through it. But that's the key word, tanks. There are no tanks on the side of Ever. We saw Ruined Layer of Elise and Full Damage Jarvan both got nuked down by the bullet time. You look at that bullet time and sometimes it makes you a bit excited. I know I look at the damage numbers and it says, okay, if someone for some reason doesn't get out of this, 5,500 potential damage with 3 AD items. That's coming closer and closer to reality here. Multiple members can be nuked down by bullet time from TNT now that he's level 16.
I feel like they completely discarded this Misfortune pick, to be honest. There were so many things that could deal with it available in the pick and ban. Trundle was up. Shen was up if you want to wade through and maybe
Olaf, as I mentioned.
Olaf was available. Even Braum would have been a much better choice, I feel, than the Alistar. But they, blinded away.
Interrupt capacity forever to deal with that Misfortune is definitely not as present as they would have liked. And at least QG, you can see them now. They've taken their foot off the gas, of course. The Baron is yet again available, and Swift definitely is thinking about setting things up here as well, trying to get some wards placed down and taking control. Elixir of Iron for him as well, so you know exactly what he's trying to achieve with that one. TCT might be caught here as well. He's got to be careful. Athena will be able to jump on him, but Swift never too far away to assist. The Crazy wants a bit to flash out straight away. The flag and drag comes through. TCT, he somehow just goes down, but it took a lot of damage to do it. And now, damage being traded out on towards the side. It's Loken forcing to flash over.
Even the best situation for Ever just didn't happen to have enough. DoinB will finally get shut down, but a full channel of bullet time again. TNT picks up even more. It's a 3-for-2 trade, and now they've got to back off again.
And no one can do anything compared to this Ryze. Ryze runs freely. Everyone cowers in fear. Once again, the Misfortune ultimate. Deft-esque in using terrain to ensure no one could interrupt it over that cove towards the red buff. Now they're going to turn on to Baron. There's no hope. Only Alistar's even in the area. And should be a second Baron pretty comfortably over to ChowGu.
30-second death timers for Crazy and for Athena here, and QG, they have not stopped since, of course, we hit that critical mass. It's their second Baron for the game. They're only missing DoinB here, and it might back off for one, I'd say, last push by the looks of things.
11.5k in the bank ahead of Ever. The ChowGu Reapers are looking to close us out in style now. They can push out the side waves, take their time. They've still got plenty of Baron buffs since they only just secured it. Waves pushing in their favor across the map. And not even all of Ever's even up yet. In goes Loken, though.
Swift now going to try and get to grips with him as well. Tough situation for a Rexar to deal with. Be annoying to have him go down so early, but I think he will be caught. He tries to flash, but Loken reads it well, and that's the 4th kill for ESC coming up there as well. Swift off the board.
And look, Swift is prone to the brain fades, but crucially, this is much later in the game. It might only be an asterisk on what has been an almost flawless performance by ChowGu. An answering dragon, it's 2-2, so of course the dragon, 5th dragon win condition well out the door, whether it was 523 or 521. And it's just going to be a bit more farming. It buys them a little bit of time, but it definitely doesn't seesaw any of the momentum that ChowGu has cultivated in the first 35 minutes.
Absolutely none. The only thing they were able to push back was the bottom lane wave a little bit, courtesy of Athena, but that can be dealt with. At this point, even as Caston, I'd be worried to go up against TNT solo. And the rest of the team are just trying to stem the bleeding here. They have an open inhibitor in the middle, and all ChowGu needs to do is group up, and that's what they're doing best.
Just so many questions to ask towards Ever. This team that was so on top of the meta at the Kesper Cup, that was so on top of the meta as recently as yesterday, the last series that we were able to cast Uber. And you just look at this team and you think, okay, from the Alistar first pick, where you're like, that's not a flex champion, that's weird, Trundle's up, but they're annoying. You're like, okay, Alistar's strong, I could sort of follow through there. And then we saw the previous fight where V teleports in. Athena and Crazy didn't use their teleport in the last fight. They were down 2 summoners. For whatever reason, they looked for a brute force fight and paid for it. Now they're actually cultivating a spot for the teleport. But whether it was stylistically or in champ select, it's going to need a big rebounding from Eva as we move into game 2.
The siege now is going to be underway yet again. Key already getting chunked down at half health, might I just add as well. Face the mountain shield for him, but Athena, just escapes that last overload. He's going to be okay, but he can't say the same, of course, of that inhibitor turret. It's QG again, inexorably pushing forward. Doing B things, of course. Having to lay down that combo whenever he can. Won't quite kill Key, but will cripple him critically.
No one dead on the side of Ever, but they carved out a big flank off the side of Key's backside, take themselves another inhibitor, 2 down in the base. They can just keep clearing these waves and try back again. 37.5 minutes on the clock, and a controlled, comfortable, and clean lead for QG.
And at the end of the day, we always try to give these teams the benefit of the doubt. Honestly, Ever certainly have a lot of benefit left in the tank to tip the scales, given how on top of the meta they've been recently. There's just questions I have. For example, Athena committing to the Lich Bane early, not going for the Abyssal Scepter, which is one of the most cost-effective AP items left on this patch. He went for the split push build. The moment this push exited as a potential option, in fact, the split push hasn't really been talked about. He's committing to it now, but when you're talking about an 11 to 12,000 gold lead, it's not much of a factor. But they've just gone for these slight stylistic choices. They haven't used their globals anywhere near as well. We mentioned the statistic 10-0 on teleport mid laners. And this one has been a flubbing when it comes to teleport play consistently forever.
Looks like that record will be smashed, in fact, Papa Smithy. And, you know, at this point in the game, when it looks like you've lost it, if you can maybe get a wipe, you can turn it around. But this is not exactly what Ever's comp is going to be built for. They need to spend this time looking at what happened, what went wrong, how they can fix it for next time, and revise some of those questionable decisions. Because we did see yesterday they were able to turn around what didn't look like the optimal start.
I mean, Ever let things happen. They let the draft kind of get away from them. They just didn't have the same stranglehold they did in yesterday's series. They let the early game get away from them. A team that's been so aggressive with lane swaps, so aggressive with taking down turrets. There were no turrets taken in the early game whatsoever. It was just passive farming from Loken and Key. So it just felt like they let Xiaogu play at a slow pace in the early game. And how much does that suit a team where the early game, that's their biggest headache? When they get to late game, they're actually pretty competitive. Xiaogu were winning the early game, and it's no surprise that when we get to the late game, with the lead that they've cultivated, or at least able to passively put together, they're doing just damn fine.
This is a team that was built around TNT originally. At its formation, it was Linko's desire to build a strong core around TNT, and you can see that's almost been personified in this particular game now. It's a QG coming forward aggressively, maybe looking for something there, but it is TNT 6-0-2 right now as well. The flash forward for V. Well, actually, not quite catch on towards Loken there as he can return some damage. A flag of drag from Crazy gets him in. V is blown up, but there's the bullet time. A lot of damage coming across the face. Athena goes down now as well. Ares Chaos Storm, he gets knocked up. He repels away from most of the damage when Key takes the brunt, but there's Ares trying to back away. Crazy goes for the backline, but switch. He's swinging left, right, and center. Haymakers coming out from that man. Crazy, should I say, is going to drop.
That's just the gold disadvantage. They can't do a thing even when they manage to pick up a pick. Last inhibitor's gonna fall. This game could be over in a matter of seconds, and Loken bails out, just barely escaping, and Key, he's not gonna be so lucky. TNT, the godlike kill.
As Ares now will fall as well. It's a matter of time. He's going to repel out of danger if he can, but they look towards Loken as well. Ever pouring out of the fountain just to be taken down straight after. He survives, but that Nexus is going to be looked at now. QG are going to work that one down, and game 1 will go over to the Xiaogu Reapers.
Xiaogu picking up this win is a surprise to many watching. You saw from the fan vote they were big underdogs, but they were kind of gifted a fairly safe draft. They didn't have to worry about all the headaches that H2K did in terms of flex picks. You thought, okay, maybe it's going to be the gameplay from Ever that will really be the big determining factor. But then they played such a passive early game, and that just really plays into the hands of a team that's all about late game team fighting. They're usually doing that from, what, 5,000 or 6,000 gold behind? When they're ahead a little bit, they look fine.
Absolutely, and this is a team that, again, they played several different styles in the games they played through this tournament, coming down from all the way at the start of the bracket. So much experience, and this is what they talked about they wanted, to be able to face off against as many different teams, take that experience back to China. The way they're looking right now, they may end up very well dominating the LPL next season.
Well, gentlemen, we've seen characteristic things from both of these two teams that actually now have been turned on their head. It's QG weaker early game. It's Ever amazing and constrictive draft. But let's pass over towards our experts now as well as we break this one down bit by bit.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And yeah, a bit of a surprising result for sure. But as the commentators were saying, from the draft, things looked a little questionable on Ever's side.
I have to say, like, even though everyone agrees that they could do better, I still feel like they had the tools to win the games, and because of the Elise and the draft, etc. I feel like they didn't really play to their win conditions at all. They didn't aim for a lane swap, which is so good for Soraka and Ryze, and they didn't really feel like they had a clear idea of what they wanted to do in the game. And then, of course, the final thing that is questionable was Ari's performance.
I mean, yeah, we have seen, I think the game got decided at the top lane where the blue buff was still up, and all they had to do was play around Ryze. They forced a flash 1 minute ago, and that's your next game plan for the next 4 minutes. Camp the Ryze, make sure he's behind, and Elise committed to a kill on Swift. Swift got out with 20%, and after Elise's cooldowns, we're all on cooldown, of course, she still committed to killing the Ryze, and then Ryze was like, hey, Elise has no cooldown, so I'm just going to turn on you guys and kill you. And from that point on, Ryze had all the tools in the game to need that they can actually win the game, and I think the game was actually decided in that skirmish that should have been won forever with the tools they had, but they decided to, yeah, it was like miscommunication, I think, in that part.
Okay, Frost, would you agree that, I mean, yes, Ever still probably could have won if they played their own game, but maybe they fell a little bit into the trap of QG?
Naturally, I know that we had some discussion. Also, it was Alistar versus Trundle, because Trundle would have been so effective against QG's composition right there. It's going to slow down Ryze. It can displace Misfortune off of her ultimate with the pillar. But the big thing for me is that QG are only good at one thing, and it's team fighting. And by picking the Jarvan, yes, Jarvan can split push, but comparatively to Fiora, it's much easier to look for the 1-3-1 right there.
Right.
And it just tells me that, okay, we're going to go for these team fights. And I understand what you guys were saying, you know, before on the desk, that Jarvan's going to be able to lock them down. They have no mobility. You have so much mobility on the side of Elise, cast, and then get to that back line and things like that. But it's like, why play into QG's one win condition? Don't fight them. They don't know how to move around the map as effectively as Ever. Ever's proven that. So just run them around.
Right.
I feel like the win condition for Ever was like simply because they had a stronger jungler and they had the TP on the caster, and eventually they want to avoid these fights that QG are so good at, and that should be the game goal. But what I want to credit the most, the person that we critiqued so hard after his first series, was Swift. He outplayed Ares on the map completely because he always knew where he was always on point in a matchup that is considered favored in Elise's favor.
Yeah, so overall, I mean, QG definitely turned out to play, but the big question does remain, if they're challenged, what are they going to do? Because it sounds like we all kind of agree that Ever did allow QG to be like, all right, let's see what you're made of, and QG said, well, we're really good at this. What else have you got? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll find out in Game 2 when we come back after this short break.